All right, we're back. It is COMP125, and we are client-side web development at Centennial, summer 2016 semester, and it's week 12, part one of our broadcast. I'm going to talk about a bunch of stuff today, and I'll try and do it pretty fast. One of the things I want to talk about is your new assignment, which is due the last day of classes. So that'll be like the last day, Friday, August the 19th, right? I'll give you as much time as I can to get it done. And I want to try and help you with it next week as much as I can in class, because I want you all to be successful. These people are talking nicely. Let's talk about what I want you to do. I want you to make a banner ad, right? But in order for you guys to make a banner ad, you need some technology to do it, right? You're going to get a banner ad that's going to be added to your mini portfolio site somewhere, right? And you're going to use something called Create.js to do it. So we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today, and I may have to do an addendum video, an extra video for you guys to help you, because we're missing a video based on, we missed class on Monday. So I might do an extra little broadcast if we don't have time to cover everything I want to cover today. And then it'll be additional information you'll have to look through yourself, right? And I apologize, but I want to try and give you that so that way you don't miss anything. So we're going to use the Create.js suite of libraries. We're also going to use TypeScript. I want to talk about how to use TypeScript coming, this week and next week. Kind of an intro into the language and how to do that, and how it works with JavaScript and how it helps us, and all that stuff. So what are you going to make? You're going to make an ad to promote one of your projects, right? It's going to have animated text that basically says something about the project. So, hey, take a look at my project. It's really cool, kind of thing. And then when you click on the ad, when it has to have some animated graphics, we'll talk about animated graphics too. Very, very simple, by the way. When the user clicks on the ad, it kind of transports you to the page, right? To the project page. That's all it does, just like any banner ad. Here are the requirements. When it comes to your structure, you're going to have to make an ad of one of these sizes. So a 468 wide by 60 pixels tall, like a little ad that goes across the page, right? A square that's 250 by 250, a rectangle that's 300 by 250. There's different sizes, and these are all the old style ads that we used to have before. And I'm making them small because the bigger they are, the more difficult it is for you to make. Also from a from a standards perspective, this is what we used to use. Yes. Yes. One of them. One of these sizes.
Where do you need us to place them?
You're going to place them where only one. You only need one ad, and you need to place them somewhere on your page that makes sense for you. So when you lay it out properly with Bootstrap or whatever, you click on the ad, it takes you to your project. It's almost like a big button. All right. To the project that this points to. One of your projects on your project page that this points to. Okay, so let's say, for example, I have a project, I did a maker project, I don't know, and my maker project was some kind of temperature sensor, and I really want to, talk about it, right? So I have this little ad that maybe has a picture of my temperature sensor. Click on the ad to see the details, and it kind of says some text that says, hey, click me, whatever, maybe nothing too flashing or strobing, and we'll talk about that. When you click on the image, it looks like an image, it's going to take you to that particular project. Right to that project. Graphical layout. Ads must take up the entire space of the image you've chosen. So you can't just say it's 250 by 250, but the ad is like 1 pixel big. All right, you can't make it big, and it can't be too big, right? If it's too big and you can't see it, then it's bad. Ads can't be segmented, contain multiple copies of itself within the ad, or appear to be more than one ad. Can't do that. So it's one ad is one ad. All right, these are kind of rules. Kind of 101, and everything has marks around it, so if you follow the instructions, you'll be good. Relevance and quality. Ads must be relevant to the projects you're promoting. So just don't make an ad that's with a tank that sees the tank doing something when your project has nothing about tanks, right? Make sure that it makes sense, right? The text has to be legible, so don't make so the text you can't see the text, because part of the ad is I can see what it says on there, right? No strobing and flashing. So don't make flashing backgrounds or strobing text or anything like that. No, we don't do that kind of stuff. And it's not good anyway. None of this trick to click, kind of thing, right? Error. Your computer's having an error. Click me to fix it. None of that, all right? Please don't make those kind of things. Has to be family safe, so no inappropriate content, right? It's going to put it out there, right? And no inappropriate language, right? So think about this as your ad. You may not have any sound embedded. So there's no sound in the ad. So it's not like, some kind of beat going on in the background to make you click the ad, right? You don't have to do that. And the ads animation must stop upon click and link you to your mini portfolio project page. So it's not going to keep going forever, all right? So those are the requirements. Again, GitHub hosting and, GitHub and cloud hosting is part of it. One thing I didn't do here is tell you how to make it, like in terms of your site structure. I expect that you should follow site structure rules here for this one. But I'm going to give you some flexibility on this one since this is the last assignment, right? And I'm also not telling you what your ad's going to contain. So I'm not going to tell you, you must have these 5 things or whatever. No, this is your ad. You have to promote your project or whatever. And I want you to think about something that makes sense, okay? The only thing I ask is that you follow these rules and that the ad is no bigger or no smaller than one of these, okay? So if you make an ad that's like 10 pixels by 10 pixels, and tell them I'm done, doesn't meet requirements. It's too big, it's too small, right? And if you make an ad that's full page, right, like 500 by 500 or something crazy like that, or 1,000 by 1,000, too big. That's not an ad. That's like a carousel. So it's got to meet one of these requirements. Okay, so that's nice. This is our assignment. I put it up on eCentennial. It's worth 15% of your final mark because it's going to require all the stuff we've talked about up to date and a little bit more, right? Because you need to know how to, attach to the page. You need to know how to click it to link to somewhere else. You need to know a few other things we're going to talk about today, and that's why it's worth 15%. Okay, let's check this out and see what's required. How do we do this stuff, and what is Create.js anyway? We talked about it last week briefly. If you go to Create.js, createjs.com or .org, I think is where it is. Createjs.com, there it is. It's this. It's a suite of libraries that I use primarily for gaming, right? I can make any game with Create.js. But actually, there is a really cool use case for using Create.js and the canvas, HTML canvas, to create ads, right? And there's four libraries that normally are attached to Create.js. There's easel, tween, sound, and preload, right? These are all the libraries we can use. We're primarily going to be focusing on easel.js because we can't get around to doing the other ones, only because there's no time, right? That's one thing. We're also going to be using TypeScript, right, to help us with this, because TypeScript, which is kind of a superset of JavaScript, it helps us write JavaScript better. It's almost like syntactic sugar, add syntactic sugar to our JavaScript to make it more robust and error-free. So that's what TypeScript does. So we have to set up our project, and today what I want to do for this session is primarily set up our project so it works, right? And that's going to take up a little bit of time. So bear with me while we do it, and if I don't get done what I want to get done for today, then again, I will record a little bit more to help you guys out, to get going. And then next week, what we'll do is we'll focus primarily on just getting this done so that we do your assignment together. Like, I don't want to do your assignment so you don't know what you're doing or whatever. So be prepared next week to work on this thing in class, right? Remember the week after, which is week 14, we will be having an exam. So, and it'll be based on some of the stuff that I've been talking about here, Ajax and all the other stuff that we're talking about maybe. But definitely the stuff we're going to be talking about for your final assignment will be on the exam, right? So this stuff here. Okay. And like I said, it's a culmination of a bunch of different things. So if you can do this stuff, you can do anything. All right, so what do we do? So first of all, let's get to our assignment details. Remember, we've been working with an assignment or a COMP125, a lesson 11. I'm just going to duplicate this one just so that we don't start from scratch. And we're going to create lesson 12 from it. And you can copy and paste it into your project the way you like. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code here. Again, you can certainly use whatever you like to use. Like I said before, you don't have to use Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to go into our assignment details here. So here's this is our lesson, and open it up. I'm going to have to refactor this thing a little bit, and I want to get rid of the any GitHub relation, right? So if I go to GitHub, as an example, I got to do this, and I want to clean this up right now. So what I want to do is I want to open it up in terminal, and I want to remove git. So I'm going to say rm minus rf dot git. You can also right-click on git in Windows and get rid of it, right? So that way you start from scratch with a fresh repository. Things I got to change. I'm going to change. I'm not going to have an about page or an index page right now. I'm not going to focus on about or sorry, a contact page or anything like that. I'm going to primarily focus on my index page. That's the one I'm going to be focused on today, right? So the other pages will be just there as part of the project, but I'm not really doing anything with them on this one. I already have a typings.json file because we used typings last time for jQuery, and I showed you how to use typings in terms of getting code hinting for jQuery, right? And we need to do a little bit more stuff with code hinting, so that's why we're going to use typings again. So that's definitely part of our project. The other thing is our README file has to change, so it's got to say less than 12. And this is really doing things, you know, like create.js with TypeScript, which is, again, we're off book now. This is all me, right? So this is not related to a chapter in the book, right? So create.js with TypeScript, that's what we're doing for less than 12. And we're also going to change our index.html. Our title should stay as home, right? That's good. But we also have to add in a canvas element. So I'm going to wipe out some of this stuff here. See, I have a footer right now. I'm going to keep the footer, and I'm going to keep the nav bar because it's not hurting us, right? But what I will do is in the middle where I have intro to jQuery and all this kind of stuff, in my container row, I like this. I like the container row with a button, the click me button. Get rid of that, and get rid of all this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a new element called a canvas element. That's actually an HTML element, HTML5. Introduce it first of all. I want to give it an ID right now of canvas. So the canvas element with an ID of canvas, so we can access it. I want to also specify a size. We're going to make it fairly big. We're going to make it so that it is, the width is 320, right? And the height is also, it's a square, 320 by 320, so we can see it. Okay, there it is. So 320 by 320. I'm going to go into my content here in my app.css, and in my app.css, it gives me some content details for my first sentence and my row and all this kind of stuff. Let's wipe this out. I don't want to kill the body one. Leave the body one in there, but let's kill all this stuff and just put in something for my canvas element. So anything that has an ID of canvas, I want to give it a bit of a border that is 1 pixels black solid. Right? So I want to kind of give a 1 pixel solid black border, right? And if I was to run this thing as is, and before I do that, I'm just going to check to see if there's anything else I can update. Let me see if I have my JSON config, my project's HTML, typings, Bower, and Bower.json. Bower.jason's got to change to less than 12. That's got to change. Okay. And let's check this out. So let's see what I get right now. That's what I want to say. Then we'll upload this to GitHub so you can have it as well. So I'm going to look at terminal. I'm going to run light server. And when I pull it up, if everything goes well, we should see this block. Right? Do you see it? And if you don't, by the way, you see that this stuff is working still. I haven't changed my app.js at all. We're going to do that in a bit. But this is what you should see. You should see, if you did everything properly, you should see this square that's 320 by 320. Yeah. Yes. So app.css, it looks like this. So just all I've done is I've killed everything. I just have a border of black solid, right? 1 pixel black solid. If you really want to be fancy, you could do something like, I don't know, a border radius of 5 pixels here. Border dash radius of 5 pixels. And when you do that, then if you go back, you can see that it's a rounded border now instead of a, a good border. So border basically adds a line that goes around everything, the whole canvas. I'm targeting the canvas, anything with a canvas ID on it. That's how CSS works. And I added a border radius of 5 pixels to give me a bit of a rounded border, so it's not completely square, as you can see now, right? All right. Do I need this part here, my nav bar? No, I don't, but I'll leave it in. It's not hurting us anymore right now. One thing I got to do is when I go to my app.js is right here, and now we're sitting at August 3rd today, right? August 3rd, 2016. And you can see that I've got a bunch of stuff in here that I don't need. For example, I got all these comments. I'm going to take them all out now because that was just for last week for jQuery with Ajax. And I'm going to just take these comments out. So please go through your comments if they're in there already from last week and take them out. Do I need XHR address book just as a review? We did jQuery last week. Do I need these things? No. Because if you realize what we were doing last week, I'm just going to take these out too. With the last piece, jQuery, just to give you a reminder, does a lot of that stuff for us, right? We didn't have to use any of that stuff, any kind of XHR object at all, and jQuery took care of it all itself, right? So here's where it says hello world and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to get rid of this. I don't need that. I know jQuery, where it says jQuery goes here. I'm going to get rid of that and get rid of all this. And then I'll upload it to GitHub so you can compare what I have with what you have. And let's just make these a little tighter so it gives us a little bit more room to work with. Get rid of all this, all my comments. I've also changed my code coloring a little bit differently so that you can see slightly different than what you saw before. But I don't need these, as you can see. I don't need these because there's no errors. There's no problems with me using those at all. All right, so this is what typically would look like my JavaScript page, right? Okay, and let me just upload this to stuff now. So I'm going to create a new repository here. I'm going to add all these things in there. You're going to see all the changes as we go forward. So a bunch of changes here, and I'll say initial commit. I got no place to push it, so I'm going to kind of do that now. I'm going to go to up online here and create a repository with under Centennial College. And here it is, new repository. We're going to make this new one called COMP125 Summer 2016 Lesson 12. Right? And create that repository. I'm going to grab this link. Actually, I'll just grab these two things. Go down to here and punch them in. And we're good to go. So we've got that stuff. So if you want to go look up online to see so if you got what I've got, you can go up online under Centennial College COMP125 Summer 2016 Lesson 12, and you'll have all the project files just like I have, right? So you don't have to suffer too much. Okay, this is all good. But what I really want to do is I want to talk about Create.js. Remember we talked about getting some code hinting. And I like it, but what I want to try and talk about is TypeScript a little bit, right? So imagine if I have this file and I don't have any kind of code. I have code hinting, but whatsoever. I can't tell JavaScript from itself. We talked about this. JavaScript really has loose types. It's a loosely typed language, right? TypeScript, on the other hand, is not. TypeScript, on the other hand, can be as strict or as loose as you want to make it, and we can add types alongside of our code. To keep it simple, I think, now thinking about it again, trying to think of what to do here. Maybe what we should do is get rid of my about page and everything else and just really slim it down to my index page with no nav bar, just to make it really super simple for this stuff. Because my concern is that you're going to lose track of everything else. And so there's a lot of code here that I don't want you to see. I mean, you can certainly see this code, but it's not going to interfere, but it's also not going to help you too much. So my thinking is, I'm just going to go back into my code here on my operating system, and I'm just going to get rid of some of these files. So I'm going to go into get rid of my contact page. I'm going to get rid of my projects page. I'm going to get rid of my about page. So those things are coming out. And you can see that I've got edits here on the side. These are things that are deletions, right? My content's not going to change. My JS config.json, we can keep that for now. Under our scripts, I have an address book.json. Let's get rid of that. We don't need that. That's just going to just confuse everything. My app.js is going to stay for a second, but we're going to change that up in a second as well. And we shouldn't have anything else. All you should have from an HTML page perspective is just your index.html. Let's get rid of the partials folder. Let's get rid of that too. I don't need that because we're going to really slim this project down a lot. That means that I don't need any of this in my code because I'm not doing any of that stuff. None of this. And this was all part of last week anyway, so we'll just get rid of all this. So all you should have is this now. Your entry function, right? And your index.html. And then we'll slim this down here. Index.html, I don't care about a header. And I don't care about a footer because that's just not required for now. We're just going to focus on what we're doing here. All right, so we've got some stuff in here, like our jQuery and our jQuery UI and this kind of stuff in our project. I want to get rid of jQuery, jQuery UI. Well, jQuery UI for sure. jQuery I'll keep for Bootstrap. That's the only reason why I'm keeping it. We don't need it. So this is our new project. So I actually have made some deletions and modified my app.js and index.html. That's all I've done in here. So if you're following along at home, or if you're going to follow along today with me, then this is all I'm doing, removing stuff. So my project should look like something like this now. I have my assets folder with some images. I don't have any images in there right now. I have a content folder with my app.css. I have my index.html, a jsconfig.json, which we're going to talk about later, a README file. My script file only should contain my lib folder with jQuery and stuff that I have in there, my app.js. And my typings file should be there as well. Typings.json should be there, and my web.config file to help us with Azure. That's it. Okay, so if you have all those things, we're good to go. Let's take a look at removing some things from the library because we don't need everything. For example, in my scripts lib file, I have Bootstrap, Font Awesome, jQuery, jQuery Mobile, and jQuery UI. I definitely don't need jQuery Mobile or jQuery UI, so let's get rid of those. Now, who remembers how to get rid of them from my dependencies? May I ask you to do this on a test? Huh? Uninstall. So Bower, uninstall. Then you target what you're looking for, which is jQuery-mobile-Bower --save. And that'll remove that if it's there. There we go. And the same thing goes with Bower, uninstall. So I'm kind of slimming up my project a little bit. jQuery -UI --save basically keeps track of all my changes. That's gone too. All right, so I moved those two out. Also, from a typings perspective, typings has jQuery, jQuery Mobile, and jQuery UI. I don't need those, so I need to remove them from typings as well. Now, how do I do that? Remember, typings is a new thing. It's another thing that helps us with code hinting, right? And if I go typings and just press enter, you can see that there are install and uninstall, and it would be the same way that I installed it is the same way I uninstall it. So we have to call it the right thing though, and if you look at the typings under here under my index.ts file, jQuery, jQuery Mobile, and jQuery UI, right? And under my inside typings in the global folder, I also have jQuery, the typings. These are type definitions for jQuery and for so on. We don't have to touch these. I'm just showing you what they are, so that you're not freaked out when you see them. Okay, so how do I do that? So let's see if I can get rid of, let's just open this up again one more time. So I want to see my jQuery Mobile and jQuery UI. I want to get rid of those. And it's a little bit more tricky with typings. So if I go typings, uninstall, and if I'm thinking that it's going to be something like jQuery Mobile, right, -s -g, you might think that that's enough. Sure enough, it is, right? Typings, uninstall, and then it's jQuery UI -s -g, capital S minus capital G, which is basically removing it from our roster here. So we don't need those typings, and so we've slimmed down our project enough. And so what I'm going to say here is these are all the changes I made to the project. 872 changes, right? Well, that's what happens, right? I'm going to add all those changes to the staging area. I'm going to say removed jQuery and jQuery UI and jQuery mobile, right? So, well, and push. I wanted to show you that because I know some people were asking me through email, how do I remove stuff with Bower? How to remove stuff? You've shown me one time. I can't remember how to do it. Here it is again. Yes. Huh? It's no problem, but it's just heavy. Your project becomes heavier. That's all it is, right? And you don't need to do that. Yes. Did I what? Sorry, sir. No. For now, I want you. I'm just slimming it down so I can show you how to use everything. Next week we'll do more. Right? We'll expand this one more time and add a project and somehow to get there. But for now, all I want to do is make my ad. So now let's take a look what I have left. I still have my canvas, and if I open this in Terminal, and if I go to Light Server, I should see the following now. Light-server just should be the actual object itself. Bam. That's what I should see. Okay. The space you're getting here is because of Bootstrap. Right. All right, so we have a little image here, or a space that I'm going to do my work. And I want you to think about the canvas as a place that I can draw, like a dry erase board. That's what an HTML canvas is. And in order for me to redraw, I have to tell HTML to erase my canvas and put everything back again. Okay? The canvas, anything I put inside the canvas, any text I put in there will be rendered, drawn, as pixels. So you can't like hover over it or you can't highlight it or do anything with the text that I put inside the canvas. The text that I put in the canvas will be converted into pixels, right? It's a totally different thing. So think about the canvas as almost like a pixel playground where I can play around with like points that I put things together, and so they look like words or images or whatever, but really they're just a bunch of pixels that I'm moving around, okay? It's important to understand this because anything I do when I draw on the canvas is manual. So that's why we use a nice API like Create.js. So I need to get these things. I want to get some help to do this stuff, and I'm gonna kind of close this off and clear. So I need my libraries. Now I could go by hand, grab them to the Create.js thing and download them, but it's far better for me to get them through Bower, and they are available through Bower. So I have to search for them, and if I want them all, so I want easel.js. That's the first one. Oh, Bower easel.js, what I want to do, and to see if it's there, and it is. If I just type in Bower install easel.js, it'll get easel.js from the Git folder here, right? Easel.js, and that's what I want to do. So let's do that together. So it's Bower install easel.js, and then it's minus save. I'm just going to grab easel.js and put it inside the lib folder, right? Let's do the same thing for the other ones. I don't need them all, but I'm going to get them all, right? So I want to get Bower install. So first of all, let's search for tween.js. Tween.js, see if it's there. And it is. We can find tween.js in the same place, but there's two. There's one that's Sol, which is not what I want, and there's this one. So I need to use this one, which is capital T, capital JS, and that's what I want, right? So I want to say Bower install. That's why I check to see what it is first. Tween.js, like this, capital J, capital T, capital JS. And I'm guessing that sound.js is going to be the same. And probably preload.js is going to be the same. I'm going to save, right? And that'll get all those, right, from the right folders. So you can do them all at once. I showed you Bower. You can always do one after the other. All right, so I've got the entire library, and let's take a look and see what that looks like physically. So if I go back to my lib folder, I see Bootstrap. Here's easel. There's preload. There's sound. There's tween. There are all these libraries. In order for me to use these libraries, I've got to install them in my index.html page. All right? Any library that I want to use has to be listed here in my index.html page. Right? If it's not listed, can't use it. Okay? And it's got to appear before my script, my app.js. Okay? So what I'm going to do, make some spaces, and this is going to be my site scripts. And this is going to be my JavaScript section. This is going to be my JavaScript libraries, because we got a bunch of JavaScript libraries we're going to access. And I'm going to copy this a bunch of times to add them in. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4 libraries, and if you really want to be crazy, you can always go something like this too. I'm crazy, so I'll say something like create.js libraries. And now this is all wrong. Obviously, they're all bootstrapped. So I got to point to the right place. So the first one I want is easel, right? And it's under easel lib, and then easel.js-0.8.2.min.js. I'm going to copy this one, the path, and I'm going to replace this one with the path for easel. Now you're going to say, what? Why are we doing all this, Tom? Because you need all these libraries for us to manipulate the canvas, right? Properly with the full suite of libraries. If you do take any additional courses with me, like for example web game programming, if I do it, or even advanced graphics, right? We'll be using very similar libraries here. The next one is tween. So I want to go into tween and grab tween.js.0.6.2.min.js and copy that one. Put that in there. So again, this is all set up for me to make your ad. And I'm laughing because it seems like a lot, but really, once you've done it a couple times, it's not that big of a deal. Sound.js is this one. Copy path. So instead of using one API like we did before with jQuery, we're using a bunch. And the last one, of course, is preload. And preload allows us to preload all of our graphics if we're going to do something big. So we don't have to make many calls to the system. Just a moment. One sec. Yes? Node.js, they're all compatible. These are all compatible libraries. No. No. These are all the libraries. So this is the order that I want you to put them in. So again, if we start off with easel.js, then there's tween.js, then there's sound.js, then there's preload.js. And they all come under Bootstrap. On that, we want to get some type hinting, right? So we want to go into our typings and add some more. Now, this is critical for us to search for the right libraries, because if we get the wrong libraries in here, or if we don't include one, then you won't get proper type hinting, right? So how do we do this? We go typings, search, and I want to look for create.js, right? You might say that's weird, but what it does actually is it links all the libraries, all the typings that you need. And you need all of these. Even the ones that just say create.js, you need those too, right? Because they're linkages that we need to set up our type hinting. I'll make it a little wider so you guys can see it. These ones. Remember how we do that. For us to set up our libraries, we need to set up, I'm going to put it up here so you can see a little bit better. In order for us to do this properly, what we need to do is, I'll make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, we need to do typings, install, and then the name of the library and the source first. Source first, and then our tilde, and then the name of the library. So I'm going to do it in order here. So I'm going to say dt tilde, and then create.js, right? dt tilde create.js -lib, dt tilde easel.js, right? dt tilde preload.js, dt tilde sound.js, dt tilde tween.js. I'm doing it all at once because minus capital S minus capital G. If you did all that, and if I typed everything correctly, if I didn't make a mistake, and press enter, it'll grab all those as dependencies and push them into my folder. Let me show you what that looks like. So before you guys did all that, there we go. This is the actual line right here, typings install dt. So now I have a complete set of typings or type hinting from my libraries, which is going to help me immensely. So imagine you guys don't know anything about this library, right? But now when I start typing a method, it's going to give you some code hinting, and it's going to tell you, hey, by the way, you're missing something. Or hey, by the way, I need something like this, right? All right, I'm going to upload this to GitHub so you have all my updates, but these are all the typings that I added in, right? Right here, if I clear. And if I go to my typings, and if I go to index.d.ts, you see that these are all the typings I have now. Easel, create.js, and they're all by order. Preload, sound, tween, they're all in there. Okay. Well, that's good. That means that if I go to my app.js, and just to show you, if I go to my app.js and I start typing in here, and if I see something like, var, and I say, as an example, my stage or my canvas, I'll do this first. Var canvas is equal to document.getElementById, and we want to focus on the canvas, right? That's one. This is normal for us. We get a reference to the canvas, right? We have to hook into the canvas element like we've already done, right? And the next one would be to create a stage. The stage is going to superimpose itself on the canvas element, and that's where we're going to play. We're going to play on the stage, right? Think about the stage as we're doing a stage play, right? That's what we're doing. It's going to be equal to a create.js. Look how it comes up. Code hinting it detects that it's there. Create.js dot, and you can see that I have options here. Stage, right? So I get the code hinting because I've installed typing, so I get this, right? And then inside there, what I want to put in is the canvas element. If I hover over stage, it tells me it's just a stage. Now this is the first level of code hinting, but we're going to get the second level with TypeScript, right? And then what you want to do is tell the stage. We want to say that before we do this, we're going to say create.js ticker frame rate is equal to 60 frames per second. This is 60 frames per second. 60 frames per second. That's how often it's going to refresh the stage. So 60 times every second, it's going to redraw the stage over and over again. That's going to take take care of all of our drawing for us, right? And the other one is create.js.ticker on tick. So every frame, I want you to do something called a game loop. We'll call it game loop. Game loop. We're calling it game loop because you can make games, but really we need another function in here that's called game loop. And what this is going to do is this is an event. The .on event is create.js's way of saying add event listener, right? So we're saying, hey, add an event listener to the ticker. The ticker is an object that's part of our create.js library, and the ticker keeps track of how many times the stage needs to be updated. That's all it does, okay? So it's going to say every frame, call the game loop function, right? So call game loop every frame. That's what it's going to do. Every frame means every 60 frames per second. If you take every second and slice it into 60 sections, that's one frame is approximately 16 milliseconds, right? So every 16 milliseconds, that's a very small portion of a second, it's going to refresh or redraw our stage area that's inside of our canvas HTML element. That's what it's going to do, okay? And of course, what we want to do here is we want to do a stage.update, but the problem is that we can't do a stage update because we've defined stage here inside of our function, our init function. What I really want to do is define it out here, right? So we'll say var stage up here, and then we'll just say one of these, stage down here. And the same thing with our canvas. We might as well define our canvas on this area here because we're going to need to use this later on. Canvas. All right, cool. So that's really what it does. It sets up a canvas, and if we don't get an error, right, my stage update method is going to trigger, right? Stage is an object. Update is a method that belongs to stage, right? What update does is it refreshes the stage. It just updates everything that's inside that canvas element over and over again. So I want to call the update method, right? And I want to do that. So here's where we're going to do it. So this is refresh stage area. The stage, we'll call it the stage container. That's what it is. We're going to do that every frame, right? Any questions so far? Because this is like new stuff for you guys. Again, we're using an API called from Create.js. We're using someone else's libraries. This is part of what we do when we use JavaScript. JavaScript, and by the way, we're doing pure JavaScript here. The only thing we're getting is some type hinting, if you will, from typings, but it's pure JavaScript still. All right, this is a great place to upload to GitHub. So now I'll add all these to GitHub. I'm going to say something like added Create.js suite to project. Okay, do this and then push it. So now you have everything up on, all my changes up on GitHub, just in case I did something that was too fast for you. Now, what is the effect of this? And I'll come back to your question in a second. If I check it out, if I go light-server, right, and I check this out, you can see that there's no effect. But let's check to see if there's any errors, which is important to check. So if I open this up and I go to here and I go to console, I do get that weird easel.js problem, right? So this is weird. Uncaught type error. This container constructor is not a function. easel.js-0.8.2.min.js, right? That's weird. I've never seen that before. Let me refresh that. Yeah, that's a weird error that I never got before. And let me go back in there and normally I would say, you know, ignore this, but I never got that error before. So I always check to see if I got it. And one of the things to check also is if I go to my index.html, did I type this in properly? Is it in the right place? It is. These are my my easel, tween, sound, and preload, right? Which is really odd. Like that's what I'm saying. One thing we're doing here that I don't normally do is include jQuery or Bootstrap, right? So if you really want to check out and see if this is a problem or if there's a clash with any of the libraries, right? You can always remove these items. So if I just remove these, it'll just ignore the styling for a second. And if I go back here and refresh, that's not the issue, right? By the way, that's not really updating, right? Let me just do one of these, and we'll go to light server and retool that. And see how it's also getting bootstrap-theme.min.css map? I mean, that's our CSS, right? That it's doing there. All right. I just want to make sure that there's no errors before we continue. That's the problem. This is new. I've never seen this 0.8.2.min.js, right? Oh, are you guys getting that as well? You can't. This is in the actual library under min.js. It's a minified version of the JavaScript library. I'm not doing anything. This is their library problem. But I don't think it's that. I think it's some other error that I'm getting. Are you getting it too? Yeah, I never got that before. That's okay. I always have uncorrupted versions of the library somewhere, so I can always upload it. And to check that, I know that I have an uncorrupted version. So just to fix this problem, I'm just gonna go stop this. I haven't done anything different here than normal, and I'm gonna undo that change because I know that these libraries don't usually conflict with Font Awesome and everything else, right? What may be causing the problem is the size of my container, 320 by 320, but typically I don't think so. 640 by 480. 40 by 480, I can make this. See that work? I don't think that's the issue. Makes it bigger. And so I didn't think that would be the issue. And the other thing is I got to check to see if there's anything else in here that I did wrong, right? So a canvas element, I'm passing that in, right? Which is important. My ticker, I got to set the frame rate, and I do a loop, right? That's in here. I use strict and var canvas stage. All that stuff is normal. There's nothing here that's going to corrupt anything, right? That should stop us from working. One of the things we could also try, like I said, and when I have this thing happen to me, and it happens sometimes when you download from Bower, right? Because you're getting applications or updates that are up online, which is okay. It's okay. What I can do is take a kind of a library that I already have, and I'll just replace my library with this one, or from the other one. So I know this one has no issues. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into scripts lib I'm going to grab the easel.js folder, copy it, and I'm going to go into ours, scripts lib. Yes. It's going to update our the stage. That's what it does. It allows us to redraw. It's a library that helps us redraw our stage. Replace. All right, and let's just kick that off again. So do one of these. Make sure that everything is saved. And I'll modify everything. Yeah, I'll leave that as well for now. And what I'll do is, sometimes what happens also is light server is the cause, but I'm not going to guess what it is. I'm going to make sure if this is it, then I know it's not me. It's not. There's no problem with the code. It's just a glitch that we're getting because of light server. No, impossible. So you see that I'm still getting the error, and yet I know for a fact that easel works perfectly. So it says this .container constructor is not a function. Also, the other thing to check is always other code to make sure that I'm not wrong, right? And I've used, the funny thing is I've used this stuff a million times. I'm not lying to you. Like, I've done this a million times, so I don't have to. I remember everything. But let's just in case I made a finger typing error or whatever, I'm going to open up another file that I used just to see that there's any issue. And ticker frame rate, untick game loop, and stage. Oh, there you go. It is my issue. So it's my issue. It means that I need to use a new keyword. That'd be nice, Tom. There we go. And that'll save the error. Okay, good. So, well, troubleshooting 101. You don't ignore the error. You have to kind of understand where it comes from. And I always try and look at stuff that I already have. Of course, I would have figured that out eventually. All right. So like I said, if I hover over ticker or over the on event, it'll give us some code hinting now. The same thing with the stage. You can see that. That's why I wasn't getting any hinting. You can see that I'm getting some code hinting. It says that the stage element requires an HTML canvas element, a string, or some kind of object. Those are the three things it requires, right? So again, your question is, why do I need easel.js? I'm using easel.js as a library to help me draw things on the canvas. That's what it does, right? Instead of me doing it manually. All right, so I've got everything working. Let's make sure that I upload that to GitHub, those changes. So I'm going to kind of go up to add those onto GitHub, and I'll say updated project. Right? Now I made the stage bigger, but who cares? And I'll go here and push. All right, so what you should have right now is something that looks like this, really big. 640 by 480, a much bigger area here. And I want to run something in here. And if you can't, now this is, again, pure JavaScript still, pure JavaScript, right? Just with typings. I'm just using typings. So what I want to do here is on my stage, after this is done, my init function, what I want to do is down in here, I want to call another function, right? From my init function. Why? So what happens is my window object calls my init function. So when it loads, my init function is ready to go, right? My init function initializes all my canvas elements and my create.js ticker, which is this counter that keeps track of every time, 60 frames per second. That's what it does, right? And this counter itself creates this side process, which is called game loop. We just call it game loop. It's actually an animation refresher, a way of refreshing the stage. We could have called it a stage refresh or something else. I just called it game loop. And then what I want to do is I want to kind of do something on the stage, and I'm going to do that with another function. But I'm going to call it within my init function because I want everything to be ready before I try and draw to the stage. If I try and do this on the side, the stage may not be ready yet, and I'm trying to draw to it, and it's not ready. It's almost like Ajax. How Ajax, we had to wait for Ajax to load everything before we actually used it. Same idea. So I'm going to call this thing main. I don't have a function called main right now, but I'm going to call it down here. So I'm going to make a new function, right, called main. In my main function, I want to do something. I want to draw some stuff, right? So Create.js has a bunch of libraries, or easel.js, and we're going to go there for a second. If I go back to easel.js, here it is. And if I click on easel.js itself, this is the library. So I went to createjs.com, click on easel.js. Under the docs section of the library, you can see that it gives examples of how to set things up. Here's your setup. Lots of little code examples, which is really awesome for a library to give you. So if you want to know how things work, you can try some of these examples out on your own. One of the things I want to do is I want to kick off, I want to put some text. This is part of your requirement for your assignment. I want to put some text onto the stage. And this is an example of how to use the text class that comes with Create.js, right? And this is what it looks like. So I need a new Create.js text object. I need to pass in what the value is, what I want to print out. This is the text string, right? What my font I'm going to use, in this particular case, 20 pixels Arial, right? And then the font color. Okay, once I do that, I also have to add this object to the stage container. Think about the stage container as a big array of objects that I'm going to show on the stage, right? So every time I want something to be added so I can see it on the stage, I'm going to click. I'm going to say whatever the stage is, add child, whatever I want to add to the stage. So this is the way I'm going to do it. By the way, this is not the only time I'm going to talk about this. So if you see this the first time and go, holy crap, there's a lot of stuff that I got to remember. No, you don't. It's not a lot of stuff here. So how do I do this? So here's my main function, and I want to do that. I want to create a variable to hold everything, and I want to call this thing hello label. Here's my hello label. My hello label is going to be an instance of a new Create.js object, text object. My text object, and it takes a few things, because as you can see, this is the code hinting. What code hinting tells me, it's going to need a text as a string. What's the quotation mean? Oh, sorry, the question mark. What does the question mark mean? What does question mark mean in C#? If I put it next to a variable, what does it mean? Anybody? You guys don't know? Optional. It means it's an optional, right? So that means that string, this text object, is an optional object. Font is optional. Color is optional. In fact, I can just leave it like this and declare a hello label with my text here, and then declare all the properties afterwards. Or in the constructor function of my object, which is text, right? The text object, text class, I can put them all in, like hello world. Okay. And then the font, which would be something like, let's make it big. 40 pixels Consolus, right? And then the color, which is, let's make it black, 000000. These are all things that are normal. So I've created my text object, but it's not going to show on the stage until I add it to the container, right? Think about my container as a list of stuff, a display list. So I need to do something like this: stage, like my container dot add child, okay? Stage dot add child, and then what I'm adding in, which is my hello label. Okay, I'm going to save that. I'll go back out there, and let's see what I get when I go to here. And there's my hello world. Now here's something that happens. Look where it added it in. I didn't tell it where to add it in, but by default, it added it into the top left corner of my container, right? Because the way computer graphics work, right, is the 0 point of my computer, right, or my screen is right here. So right here inside this corner of the stage, that's 0. When I count x and y coordinates, as I go to the right, I count positive x. So positive x goes this way, and when I go positive y, it goes this way, right? So if I want to move it to the right and to the middle, right, then I would move it positive x to the right, whatever it is. Let's say whatever the screen size is divided by 2, right? And then positive y down so that it starts over here. But here's the other thing. Look where it drew it. That means that this text object here also draws itself from the top left corner, right? So we have to offset the length of the object in order for us to center it. Let's try this out. So what I could do with this before I add it to the stage is do something like this. I could say hello label.x, the x coordinate, right, is equal to Well, we said 640 by 480. That's our new size of our stage. So we can say something like 320 pixels, right? So it's going to move over to the right, 320 pixels. That's where it's going to start displaying hello world. And then I want to also say hello label.y, right, is equal to, now it's 480, so it's going to go 240 down, right? So 240. We're going to have a problem. Not a big problem, but it's a problem. It's going to look like this. And you're like, wait a minute, that's not what I asked it to do. Actually, it's exactly what we asked it to do. Why? Because the corner is dead in the middle, right? So what I need to do is I need to kind of somehow measure the size of this object, right? And I want to kind of change the registration point. Instead of it starting to draw from the top left corner, I want to change the focal point or the pivot point to the middle of the object, somewhere over here. So this is where I start counting X, not here on the corner, right? And the way to do that is to set other objects, other properties of the object. Let's try this. So I'll do something like this. Hello label dot regex, which is my registration mark. Again, these are all properties of the text class that are built into create.js, right? Is equal to, okay, I need to measure it somehow. So I want to take my hello label, right? Dot get measured bounds, again, get measured width actually is what it is, get measured width. And by the way, this is a method that's part of the text object, right? Get measured width, and I want to multiply that by 0.5. I'm saying, hey, take the width of my hello world, whatever that is, and then divide it by 2. I never use divide when I make any kind of graphics or animation because divide really slows my my animation loop down. Multiply is a much better function, a much better way of doing the same thing. I could have put divide by 2, but I'm multiplying by 0.5, which is exactly the same. All right, so that's the first thing. So I'm getting the width of hello world in pixels, right? And then dividing it by 2, and that's where my registration mark is going to be now for the X coordinate. I'm going to do the same thing for the Y coordinate. So I'm going to say hello label dot reg Y. So the registration mark of my Y. So all I'm doing is I'm moving the registration mark from the top left corner, your top left corner over here. I'm moving it down into the middle, so that way I'm using that as where I start measuring from. And I'll do the same thing. I'm going to say hello label dot get measured height. Right? There's get measured height, and then multiply that by 0.5. Again, if I hover over get measured height, it tells me, it says, get measured height is a method that returns a number. That's what it does, right? So I get the height of the object in pixels, right? Okay, good. So I've got those two things, and I want to do this after those things, right? I want to get the height and then set my X and Y coordinates, right? And now if I save everything and I go back to my screen, I can see that it's in the middle. So if I adjust it, I've created an offset for the middle of my label. So there it is, right? Again, can I highlight this thing? Hell no. It is pixels. These are just pixels drawing on a screen. It looks like text. But all I've done is taken my text, using a library called create.js.text, right? The class that converts my string into pixels and draws them into the canvas. That's what I'm doing here. Why do we do this? And that's the question you're going to have, right? Why? Why did I work so hard, right? Because if I make my hello label an object that exists in the functional scope now, here's hello label in the functional scope. Now I have access to calling it inside my game loop. And if I do that before I update my stage, I want to do something like this. I could call hello label dot rotation or dot rotate, say, plus equals to 5. I'm not getting code hinting here. Why? Because in the global scope, right up here where I have my hello label, it doesn't know what it is. It's just any. It only defines itself down here. This is where I get some code hinting down here, right? When I hover over what the text object is, right? That's why I'm not getting any code hinting. You're going to see how this all changes with TypeScript in a second. So I'll save this, and so I get two things here. In order for me to make this work, I put hello label in my functional scope. And then the second thing I did was in my function game loop, I called my hello label.rotation plus equals to 5, which says, hey, take the rotation number, which starts at 0, How often? How does it rotate? And rotate it around its registration mark 5 degrees every frame. That's what's going to happen. So every frame, because this is being called every frame, right? It's going to change the rotation of the label 5 degrees. So what do I get? I get this. All right. I got that in 2 seconds, right? Once we figure out how to put it on, right? By the way, I do this hello label thing, hello world, all the time. And I do it with Unity, I do it with Android, I do it with iOS. It's all the same stuff. It's just a different system. Everyone has that handles writing, animation in different ways, but the idea is the same. We're just moving an object. The object that we're moving is the label object. The label object is made of pixels. We're telling it to rotate the entire object, re-render everything, redraw everything on the stage, right? Every 16 milliseconds, it's redrawing the thing on the stage over and over again. I can never hover on this thing. I can't do anything on this thing because it's not text, it's pixels. Yes? Will it do what? Only in there. So if I kind of scrunch it up, you can see that it's going to still move within 640 by 480. It's not responsive. It's not going to change size unless I tell it to, right? I have to be very specific as to what I'm going to do with this thing. This thing will never change size. That's why 640 by 480 is not really size that I'm going to use for a mobile device. I'd probably use something like 320 by 320 like I did originally. Hey, let's change that. Let's make it 320 by 320. Then we'll stop recording and we'll take a short break, right? How do I do that? Well, there's a couple things I can do. First of all, on my index.html, you can see that I have 320 by 480. Let's change these to 320 by 320. There's 320 by 320. Right, so that's on my index.html. That's the first step. Next, I got it in my app.js. Obviously, this is wrong. It can't be 320 anymore. It's going to be half of 320, right? And I can get that information from the window object, right, if I really want to, or from the how big I want for my canvas object. I can measure the canvas object. But for now, let's just use these as 320 divided by 2 is 160. And this will be divided by 2, which is also 160. So that's the middle of my little object. And if I go back to this to see what it is, you can see now that it's a smaller window and it's rotating in there. All right. Can I move the canvas element around? Yes, I could. I could. It's an element. I can move. I can do anything I want. I could use jQuery to animate my canvas element to move that around, right? Remember, the only reason why you know the canvas element's even there is because of this border that I put on. If I turn the border off, right? If I go to CSS and I take away this border altogether, I'm just going to remove this for a second. You can see that it's gone, right? You don't know what it looks like. It looks like this is like hanging out in space. So what you're going to do for your ad is you're going to place the ad. You can make it so that it melds in with the background, right? It doesn't have right now, this background is white because I haven't told it to be another color, right? You could certainly make the background color of this thing, this canvas element, change, right, according to CSS. So if I go back to my CSS and inside, background color, if I say background dash color, right, and if I choose a color for the background as, I don't know, light gray, I will make it light blue, light blue, just for you, right? Then you can see that it's light blue, yes. You can do that too. But you wouldn't want to do that. What you'd want to do in the background is, and you can use CSS to affect it, of course, right? Yes, you could. But that's what I'm saying. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm using JavaScript to do this. Now this, by the way, one thing I want to tell you before we stop recording, CreateJS set of libraries that we just used right now is 100% mobile compatible, and it's cross-platform across every browser. So this should work no matter what browser you use, as long as they're most modern browsers, like nothing like IE6 or something crazy like that. But if it's most modern browsers, that means you can use it on a cell phone, you can use it on Android, you can view it anywhere. So anything we make here is 100% compatible. It's not something that's going to be limited. And this is why we use something like this, right? Because sometimes our CSS and HTML5 works on one browser, but totally different layout on another browser. What we're using here is absolute positioning, right? Which has nothing to do. It's not responsive in any way. This thing here, whatever's inside here, stays the same side regardless of what you do. But what you could do is you could change the relative size of the canvas, right, with CSS. You could say that my canvas is, you know, a percentage of the screen. Think about it as anything that's being drawn in here is almost like a dynamic image that's being drawn. I can use the word dynamic in this case. An example of that would be if I went back to my CSS just for a second, and if I said, well, anything that has a canvas element on it, well, you know what, my width, right? What if I made my width 100%, right? There you go, right? So even though it's only 320 by 320, because I've told it it's 100% of my screen, right? Now it's the size of my entire screen because it treats it like an image, right? Yes? No, well, it is because of the size. But if you take a look at this, right? If I change my size of my screen now, right? You can see that now it becomes, well, rather responsive, doesn't it? Right? So no, my image is 100% the same size all the time. And I'm not changing anything. But everything that's inside this image is responding to what I'm doing with the stuff inside. So is it more responsive because it's fit on a phone? Probably at this point, right? Would I want it to be this darn big? Hell no, right? Could I use CSS or CSS media queries to detect how big it is? And could I use Bootstrap, some funky Bootstrap to say I only want it for small screens, I want it to be this big. For medium screens, I want it to be this big. For larger screens, I want it to be this big. Yes, you could. So yes, this could be 100% mobile compatible, right? Let's just take that weird thing away because we don't want to make it so large, right? So when we start doing things, our ad, we can certainly make, or our game, whatever you put in here, we could certainly make it the exact same size. So we know what it's going to be like, right? We could test it. This is 1-to-1, right? And then if you want to make it work on other devices, you could certainly make it, test it larger and larger to see how it's going to pan out. All right, so as a recap before we stop this video, right? We've set up Canvas, a Canvas element. We're using the CreateJS suite of libraries, and the only library we've been using right now out of those 4 is Easel.js. We're using JavaScript to access the libraries, which then, again, I've only accessed two or three bits of it. One is the stage, which I want you to think about it as a display list, an array list of elements, basically, that I store in here. For example, how many elements does the stage have right now? 1. It has one single element inside the stage, right? It's the text object, right? That's what it holds. So the stage is a container object that contains other objects, right? We update the stage 60 times per second because of our settings. We chose to make the stage update 60 frames per second as we've defined here in our init function, right? We could set the frame rate slower. If I said instead of 60, if I change this to 30 and go back, you can see now that it's half the speed because now it's refreshing half as fast. By the way, for perfect animation, what's the frame rate that you would need for movie type animation? 24 frames per second is average movie frame rate. If I go back 24 frames per second, it can still fool you enough, right? That at 24 frames per second, you won't be able to tell the difference, right? But here's the thing. See how there's a bit of a jitter and so on. For computers, though, it's much better at a higher frame rate. The higher the frame rate, the more often it refreshes the screen. And for especially for things on the web, it's better. But here's the thing: some browsers, it's platform dependent. So if you're using your Windows system and your Windows system is really bad, and I make it 60 frames per second, maybe your system can't support 60 frames per second, and so therefore you won't get 60 frames. Maybe you'll get 59 or 58, right? As an example. So the higher I put the frame rate, right now it's 24, the higher I go, let's say I go to 90, which is crazy, right? It'll support 90, but if I have a lot of stuff inside my system that goes 90, it's going to make my system fan go off, my GPU start working, and so on. Yes? No, it's bad. That means you're never going to get a consistent response, right? So 60 is kind of a good space. I think most systems can kind of support 60, and it's a little bit better than 30 or 24 in terms of the fact that it's more performant, right? And if you did what you're saying, that means every system would work differently. And that's not what we want. We want it to try and struggle to do what we want it to do at the very worst, right? And even if it's really awesome, we don't want it to go too fast, because imagine if it's now, if I make a game, but now it's going twice as fast because your system is better than mine. It doesn't make any sense. We want it to be consistent. Yes?
Can you take the input take source and part of this kind of stuff inside the converter?
Yes, you can.
And it will respond like all the sizes like this one?
Yes, there are some things you can do with Canvas like that, but why? If you're going to do input boxes, you could do it. But if you're going to do input boxes and all that kind of stuff, you want to do it with HTML. You want to use the Canvas for what it can do, which is animation, movement, graphics, all that stuff. But could you do it? Yes. The answer is yes. You have a question too? Are you good? After, are you okay? Yeah. That's another topic. Let's pause right now, and then when we'll pause for 5 minutes. We'll get back and we'll use TypeScript. We'll change our project from JavaScript to TypeScript and see the advantage. Okay.